Let me ask you something. What if you're not really a consumer anymore? What if the economic system we all live in isn't actually capitalism? Now, I know it's a shocking idea, but it's one we really need to think about. In this explainer, we're going to dive into the work of economist Yanis Varoufakis and explore his radical theory that capitalism didn't just stumble, it's already over. And something new, something he calls technofeudalism, has quietly taken its place. So, just let that sink in for a second. The central idea here isn't that capitalism is in trouble or that it's failing, but that it's already been replaced. How could something that massive, that fundamental, happen right under our noses without us even noticing? And here's the argument in a nutshell, straight from Varoufakis himself. He's not saying capitalism was defeated by some rival ideology. Nope. He's saying it was so successful, so completely dominant, that it ended up transforming into a totally different beast. This isn't some outside critique. It's an argument that the very rules of the game have changed from within. So, if capitalism is dead, what was the murder weapon? Well, according to Varoufakis, it was a brand new type of capital, one that plays by a completely different set of rules than anything the old system ever saw. Okay, let's meet the main character in this whole drama, cloud capital. Now think about old school capital, right? A steam engine, a factory robot. Its job was to make stuff, to produce things more efficiently. But cloud capital, it's a whole different animal. It's that vast network of algorithms, servers, your phone, my laptop, and its main product isn't a car or a t-shirt. Its product is changing our behavior, your behavior. Now this is where it gets really wild. This isn't just about serving you a targeted ad for shoes you looked at yesterday. It's a full-on feedback loop. The algorithms learn what you want, sure, but then they take the next step. They start to actively train you, to shape your desires so they line up with what the platform wants you to buy. The key here is that this whole process just sidesteps the idea of an open market where you're an independent person making choices. So if it's not a market anymore, where are we? This is where the whole idea of technofeudalism really clicks into place. Varoufakis argues that we're no longer operating in a wide-open, decentralized space. Instead, we're living and working inside these huge digital territories, all controlled by a new kind of digital lord. And this slide right here just lays it all out. Under capitalism, the arena was the market. The goal was profit, and you got it by competing. But in technofeudalism, the arena is what he calls a digital fiefdom. Think Google, think Amazon. And the goal isn't just profit. It's something he calls cloud rent, which you can get only by having a total monopoly over that digital space. Let's make this super concrete. We all think of Amazon as the world's biggest marketplace, right? Well, Varoufakis says it's the exact opposite of a market. It's a fiefdom. Every single seller, every buyer, every transaction, it's all watched over and controlled by Amazon's algorithms. There's no free exchange. There's just access, and that access is granted by the platform lord. And that total control lets the platform take what Varoufakis calls cloud rent. Just look at that number. In some cases, a small business trying to sell on a big platform has to give up as much as 40% of their revenue to the platform. Now, that's not profit. Profit is what you earn for creating something or outcompeting someone. This is rent. It's a fee you pay just for the privilege of being allowed to exist in their digital kingdom. It looks a lot less like a free market and a whole lot more like a medieval landlord collecting taxes from a peasant. Now, this whole transformation isn't just happening on our phones and computers. It's completely reshaping the global order. The rise of these powerful digital fiefdoms is a huge part of the growing rivalry between the United States and China. Let's zoom out and see how this is playing out on the world stage. At the very heart of all this geopolitical tension is a pretty simple imbalance. For decades, the US has bought way more from the rest of the world than it sells, and that creates this massive trade deficit. The only reason that's possible is because the US dollar is the world's go-to currency. But as you can probably guess, that's a pretty shaky foundation to build on. So what's the American game plan here? Well, according to Varoufakis, it's a really tricky high-wire act. The goal is to weaken the dollar, but just enough, say around 30%, to make US goods cheaper and help fix that trade deficit. But, and this is the key, they have to do it without causing a global panic that would knock the dollar off its throne as the world's reserve currency. Things like tariffs and trade wars are the tools they're using to try and pull off this balancing act. And of course, this puts the two biggest players in the world on a direct collision course. While the US is trying to tweak the existing dollar-based system to its own advantage, China is playing a much longer game. They see the writing on the wall, and they are actively building a completely separate financial system with their allies, one that doesn't need to rely on the US dollar at all. So, if we're really living in this new era of digital fiefdoms, does that mean we're stuck? Is there anything we can actually do about it? Well, Varoufakis argues that we're not powerless, and he actually proposes a few different ways we could reclaim the future. He really lays out two big ideas. The first one is called social ownership. And to be clear, he's not talking about the government taking over. He means the workers and the communities who rely on these platforms should actually own and run them. The second big idea is interoperability. Basically, forcing these platforms to let you take your data and your social network with you if you decide to leave. So what would that actually look like in the real world? Well, social ownership might mean that taxi drivers could create their own cooperative ride-hailing app, keeping the profits in their own community instead of shipping them off to Silicon Valley. And interoperability? That would mean that if you get fed up with one social media site, you could just pack up and move to another one and take all of your followers with you instantly. It would completely break the lock-in effect that gives these platforms so much power over us. So in the end, we're left with this really fundamental question. A question about our own identity in this new world. The way our digital lives are structured isn't just changing our economy, it's changing our society. And figuring out whether we are citizens or simply serfs is the first and maybe the most important step in deciding what kind of future we actually want to build.